Hey guys, today we have a drone battle showdown on our hands, the DJI Mavic Air 2 versus the new DJI Mini 2. What's the difference between the two and what's the better drone to go with? That's next. All right, so looking at the Mavic Air 2 and the Mavic Mini 2, let's first consider some similarities between the two. Both pretty much use the same remote, and the only difference really on these two remotes is you have lights. The Mavic Air 2 is going to have the white lights, where the Mini 2 is going to have green lights. Now, the green is a little bit easier to see in the daylight, so just a subtle change there. Other than that, it's pretty much the same. Both also use OcuSync 2.0, so they have a lot better connection than the typical Wi-Fi that the Mini 1 used before. So now the Mini 2 has OcuSync 2.0, so it can go further distances just like the Mavic Air 2. Both also have capabilities of shooting quick shots, and if you get the Fly More combos, they pretty much come with the same bag as you can see here. Just the difference is the Mavic Air 2 has DJI Mavic written on it, and the Mini 2 has just DJI, says they did away with the Mavic name. Now let's consider the price of these two units. The Mavic Air 2 starts at $799, and if you get the Fly More combo, it's going to cost $988. Now the Fly More combo is going to come with your bag, it's going to come with 2 additional batteries and your remote, as well as an extra charging hub, so you can charge all 3 batteries, which I don't have displayed here. But if you do get the Fly More combo, you're looking at $988 for the Mavic Air 2. Now the DJI Mini 2 runs $449, and if you get the Fly More combo for the Mini 2, it's going to run you $599. Now the Mini 2 combo comes with the bag, it comes with your remote. Now you also get this charging hub where you will get 2 additional batteries, which is a pretty nice thing to have, and this is something that is really neat as we'll talk about the features of the Mini 2 batteries. Another thing that the Mini 2 Fly More combo comes with is this nice Propeller Guard holder that you see here. If you do get the basic version at $449, it will not come with this. So this is a nice additional feature. So if you just put it in your bag, you can see the propellers are not going to be flimsy and rolling all over the place like it would do without it. Now, I like this feature so much with this little holder here that I went ahead and found one on Amazon that I'll put a link in the description for the Mavic Air 2. It was only about 10 bucks or so. Now the specs of the drones as they're folded as such, the Mavic Air 2 is 7.07 inches by 3.82 inches by 3.31 inches. Now the Mini 2 is going to come in while it's folded at 5.43 inches by 3.19 inches by 2.28 inches. So the Mini 2 is going to be your more compact drone, even though these are both considered good travel drones. Now let's talk about the weight. The weight of the Mavic Air 2 weighs in at 570 grams, which means it's above the 250 gram limit with the FAA, so you will have to register your drone if you do choose to go with the Mavic Air 2. Now, the Mini 2, on the other hand, weighs in at 249 grams, so it's under the 250 gram limit. This is significant because this is really considered the magic number where a drone would basically be considered like a toy drone as far as registration is concerned. So you don't have to register this with the FAA. Also, international rates seem to be the same standard, under 250 grams. So you can avoid registering it if you travel a lot to various countries. But this is really the biggest selling point for the Mini 2, is it is under the 250 gram limit, so you have a lot more flexibility and freedom when it comes to that. So this is assuming if you're a hobbyist, of course. If you're looking to make money, if you're trying to do anything with your drones commercially, whether it's the Mavic Air 2 or the Mini 2, you will still need to register it and take the Part 107 test. But as we said, when you do go lightweight, you do make some sacrifices. So we're going to continue comparing and contrasting and see what those sacrifices are. Now let's go ahead and open up these two drones and expand it so we can see that they do have similar structure. The Mavic Air 2, the first 2 arms fold outward, and then you lift it and then you can fold the other arms upward, which gives it its famous structure here. Now the Mini 2 has the exact same thing, just in a smaller feature. You have the first two propeller arms that pop out, and then the other two arms pop outward as they go up. And you can see they're very much doing the exact same kind of structure setup for the body. Now let's talk about the battery life. The Mavic Air 2 battery life can last a maximum of 34 minutes, where the Mini 2 battery life can last a maximum of 31 minutes. And that's pretty significant kind of battery life considering these two drones. Now from my testing of both these drones, both of them are slightly less than advertised that I've seen. And the more you push the envelopes as far as environments and higher elevation, the less you will see these batteries run. Now something to consider is if you do choose to go with one of these drones and you do go with the base package without the Fly More combo, more likely you're going to look at purchasing additional batteries. Now this is something to consider if you do choose to do this, because if you go with the Mavic Air 2, the batteries actually cost $115 brand new from DJI. So the more batteries you have, the more investment it is going to be. Now if you do choose to go with the Mini 2, batteries from DJI are $55 per battery. And so in the long run, if you do go with the Mavic Air 2, it will cost a little bit more because the batteries cost more. Now, obviously, because they're bigger, they do cost more. You are getting what you pay for. This is a 3,500 milliwatt hour battery here, so you are getting more when it comes to the batteries. Now one thing to consider is charging these batteries. When you do charge these batteries, it's a whole lot easier to charge the Mini 2 batteries while you're in the field, because you can just take this little battery hub, plug in a USB connector into this, and then let's say you have a battery power bank, you just power it in here, and you're able then to charge these batteries out in the field, as you can see. So it's a whole lot easier to recharge, which means you can take just these 3 batteries and have plenty of time with a power bank to be able to fly. The difference though is with the Mavic Air 2, if you do choose to go with these, it's going to be a whole lot harder to charge these out in the field. And the reason is because these batteries, you have to connect it to their charging hub, which is a lot more bulkier and harder to use. So to charge these out in the field, if you want to charge them individually, you have to take this battery charger thing, which is a lot more bulkier and heavier, in order to connect these. Now, one of my complaints about this unit is it would have been really nice to just put a USB-C port here like you see on some of the Ring batteries for Ring there, and that would have been a really good feature to just add these to each one of these. So one thing to consider is if you do go with the Mavic Air 2, you will have a harder time charging these out in the field. It's doable, but you're more likely better off just taking and buying more batteries out in the field, which again will add a little bit to the weight. Another thing to consider about these two drones is the Mavic Air 2 features what we call these quick release propellers. And basically how you would use that is you can just push them down and then turn it to the left, and you can take out the propeller. Now with the Mini 2, you cannot do that. You have to screw these in on the Mini 2. So it does come with a little screwdriver, a little Phillips screwdriver, but you do not have the quick release as an effort to save weight, and so you will have a harder time changing out these propellers out in the field if you do need to do so. So something to keep in mind there. Now when it comes to noise of these propellers, the DJI Mini 2 is going to be the quieter of the drone, and it's mainly because it's using smaller propellers and it is a lighter drone. For the Mavic Air 2, the propellers are a lot quieter than the previous Mavic Air version. Now these propellers here are some aftermarket ones that I got from Amazon. I'll have the link in the description. They run just as good as the originals. I like these mainly for the color, but they are pretty much the exact same thing, and they are nice and quiet as well. Now let's talk about wind resistance for these two. While both these drones on paper sport the level 5 resistance, the weight of the Mavic Air 2 really helps make it a more sturdy and stable drone in the higher winds compared to the Mini 2. Now, the weight and the stronger motors that are accompanied inside the Mavic Air 2 really helps it benefit when encountering higher winds. It also enables it to go faster, which is crucial if it's going to be encountering headwinds. Now, the Mini 2 is able to withstand heavier winds than, let's say, the Mavic Mini, but you are still going to be susceptible to winds. Now, I found from my testing at around 10 to 15 miles an hour wind speeds, the Mavic Mini 2 does kind of get tossed around a bit. Now, it has an excellent gimbal to really counter that, so you cannot see as much movement. But if you're just watching the drone, you can see the Mavic Mini struggled in the winds compared to the Mavic Air 2. So the Mavic Mini 2 is going to have to work a whole lot harder in those higher winds to be able to recover and keep a stable footage than the Mavic Air 2. Now, when we talk about speeds, the Mavic Air 2 also has a higher motor into these propellers. It can fly up to 42 miles an hour on sports mode. Now, the Mavic Mini 2 is capable of flying up to 36 miles an hour, so still relatively fast for these two drones. Now, combined with the weight and the higher motors with this airspeed, it makes the Mavic Air 2 the stronger drone in these heavier, strong winds. It's able to cover further distances faster because it can go faster as well. And when you're coming back in headwinds, it's able to produce and come back a lot easier than, let's say, the Mavic Mini 2 because of that. Now, one of the downsides that I notice with the Mini 2 is when you get into sports mode and you're trying to get to your location pretty quick, what it does is it dips the drone down a little bit further. And when it dips the drone down, we'll just take off these covers here. When it dips the drone down, the gimbal starts to go down like this. And it's because of the angle that you are going through the winds here. Now, because of that, it does cause a dip in your video, and that's really an inconvenience, and it can pretty much make your video at that instant unusable because of that. And if you're trying to get really good cinematic video, especially if you're in sports mode, it's going to mess that up when you go pretty fast at these higher speeds. It's going to cause the gimbal to dip down just because of the angle that this drone has to do. Where if you look at the Mavic Air 2, what you see here is you don't have this lip in the front here. And so it's not going to go as further down, and it can still clear that area, and you have a stronger gimbal. Where you have this lip that protrudes outward, it can get in the picture at times when it does dip down into sports mode and the gimbal tries to recover. So just something to consider with that. If you don't use sports mode a lot, you're in Cine mode or you're in normal mode, that's not going to be too much of an issue, but I encountered it the most in sports mode. Let's talk about altitude. Now, the Mavic Air 2 is capable of flying at higher altitudes than the Mini 2. You can fly up to altitudes of 5,000 meters. So this is significant. If you're into mountaineering, if you're into hiking and going on peaks and stuff, the Mavic Air 2 is probably going to be the better, more dependable drone because it's capable of launching at higher altitudes. The Mini 2 is only capable at 4,000 meters. Now, that is pretty still significant and really good, but the higher up you go, the more drain it's going to have on your drone. And you'll see that especially in the battery and the performance of these motors when you do get to higher elevations. Upon testing, the Mini 2 struggled a whole lot more in higher altitudes, and the battery drained a whole lot faster than compared with the Mavic Air 2. So the Mavic Air 2 is really the better drone in your harsher environments and higher altitudes. Now let's talk about sensors. Both these drones sport bottom sensors here, and this is to help the drone land and detect where the ground is, so as it lands it's not just going to crash into the ground. So both these drones have bottom sensors. Now the cool thing is the Mavic Air 2 has sensors in the front and sensors in the back. So this is good so you don't crash into anything. If you're a newer drone pilot, this added safety feature is a really good option there to help protect your investment so where you're not crashing into anything. Now the Mini 2 does not have any of those sensors as an effort to save weight and stay under that 250 gram limit. So you have no sensors here in the front. What you do see here is actually a light that comes on. Now as we turn this drone on, you can see that the Mini 2 has a light here. So that's not a sensor, so don't confuse that or else you'll crash your drone. This is just a little light, which is helpful to identify your drone. And the light can change color here, so you can customize that in the DJI Fly app when you do have that. The Mavic Air 2 does not have that light. Instead, it does have front sensors, front working sensors. You also have this little flashing light on the back here of the Mini 2, where on the back of the Mavic Air 2 you have sensors. Now the reason the Mavic Air 2 does not have those lights is because it has these on the legs here. You have those flying lights here, and so it's not needed here in the back. Now let's talk about some of the features. Both these drones are Quickshot enabled. Now the Mavic Air 2 and the Mini 2 both do Quickshots, and that's a really cool feature that you can use and get nice smooth footage. They can both do drone. They can both do rocket. They can both do circle, helix, and boomerang. Now the Mavic Air 2 is also able to do a shot called Asteroid, but the Mini 2 cannot do this shot. Now the Mavic Air 2 has all the latest intelligent flight modes, including Active Track 3.0, APAS 3.0, POI 3.0, Spotlight 2.0, Focus Track, Smart Photo, and much more. Now the active track allows you to follow an object automatically. The drone can also detect what the subject might be as you lock onto it. This can be a person who's either walking, or it can even be a car. And the cool thing is the Mavic Air 2 can recognize what it is. In this mode, you can either trace, which means you follow an object directly from behind, or you can parallel, which follows the object from the side. Now, coupled in this mode with APAS, you're able to use this as an obstacle avoidance, and it can bypass through certain structures that it detects from these front and rear sensors. So you can be running through the woods and it can be dodging and weaving certain branches and trees, and it can stay locked on you. Now it enables the drone to weave around and avoid structures while continuing to track you. So if you're a solo creator or anything like that, that's a pretty awesome feature to have. The Mavic Air 2 also has the POI flight intelligence mode, which means point of interest. This enables you to set your drone to fly around a subject automatically. You just highlight it on your screen and it'll start to fly around it. You can control the flight while the subject always remains in the center. So a pretty cool way to film and keep it nice and smooth. Another cool feature that this has is a mode called Spotlight mode. And the Spotlight mode really keeps the subject in the center, and it will continue to fly with you, and you can still control the flight, and it will keep your subject in the center as it continues to track you. So that's another pretty cool feature that's handy for your solo creators. Now the Mavic Air 2 also has a feature called Hyperlapse, which I haven't really experimented too much with that, but you can get some pretty nice hyperlapse shots with these while it's out in the air. Now the Mini 2 has none of those except the quick shots that we mentioned earlier. So just something to keep in mind what you're getting with the Mini 2 compared to all the cool features of flight intelligent modes that you have with the Mavic Air 2. Another feature that the Mavic Air 2 has is a mode called AirSense. Now the Mavic Air 2 has this feature for US versions only right now. And what this AirSense does is it detects either a plane or a helicopter that might be flying nearby, and it alerts you and tells you on a map where this plane is given your location. Now it only sends you their info, so you have the ability to get out of the way. It doesn't send your location to them. And this is just a really nice extra safety system that is built into the Mavic Air 2 to really help assure drone pilots are being safe as possible. Now the Mini 2 does not have this feature either, so you need to be extra careful. You need to have watchful eyes and listening ears around your surroundings wherever you're flying to make sure you avoid those airplanes and helicopters. helicopters. Now let's talk about the cameras. Both these drones are capable of shooting in 4K. Now the Mavic Air 2 can go up to 4K 60, while the Mini 2 can only go up to 4K 30, but it's pretty neat to have 4K 30 in a drone of this size. Now the optical sensor for the Mavic Air 2 is a 1/2 inch sensor. Now the Mini 2 is a 1 2/3 inch sensor, so it's slightly smaller. The Mavic Air 2 is just slightly bigger, so the Mavic Air 2 is going to be the better drone in low light. However, you're still getting really good pictures, and part of it is because of the bit rate. The bit rate for the Mini 2 is 100 bit rates per second, where the Mavic Air 2 is 120 bit rates per second. Both look extremely good, and you will notice slightly more detail with the Mavic Air 2, especially in the lower light conditions. Comparing the two cameras, they look really good. They're both very great cameras, especially for such a small drone in the Mini 2. Now, the Mini 2, you will notice, has a more cropped picture and more cell phone-like footage compared to the Mavic Air 2. The Mini 2 kind of has a little bit higher sharpness built into the software here, and it is noticeable, kind of making the footage at times seem coming like it came from a cell phone. Now, some other features about the video is the Mavic Air 2 also offers HDR video mode, which helps bring the colors out and makes it pop a little bit more. The Mini 2 does not have this option. You just have your basic video output. Now, the Mavic Air 2 also has a flat profile called Decentralize. And now this is a mode that flattens out the colors so it gets more detail and allows you to bring out the colors more in post if you're into doing your own color grading. The Mini 2 does not have this option. Now you can do some color grading in post with this, but it's nothing compared to the Mavic Air 2. This makes the Mavic Air 2 the more capable drone of doing professional work, and if you're looking into having a drone that can do that, the Mavic Air 2 is going to give you the better possibilities. Now let's talk about photos. Both these drones are capable of shooting in 12 megapixel photos, and both look really good. Both are able to shoot in RAW as well. Now the Mavic Air 2 is also able to shoot in 48 megapixels because of the bigger sensor. The Mini 2 cannot do this. The Mavic Air 2 is also able to do the hyperlapse mode as we talked about earlier, but like I said, I have yet to experiment with that, while the Mini 2 cannot do that either. Another feature that is worth mentioning is smart controller capability. Now, if you have multiple drones, this might be a feature that you're really looking for. And if you don't, if you only have one drone, this might not be a big deal. But right now, while they both have the same controller and are interchangeable like that with the latest software, one extra feature that the Mavic Air 2 has is you can fly it now with the DJI Smart Controller, if you have that. So it's a pretty cool thing that you can use a smart controller with the Mavic Air 2 drone. The Mini 2 is not capable of that just yet. Now that might come down in the future with a software upgrade, but as of now, this is not available for the Mini 2, so something to consider. Now let's talk about storage. Both these drones are able to have your micro SD cards, and you have it here in the back with the Mini 2, and you can just pop that on in there, where the Mavic Air 2 has it here on the side. So you can pop in your micro SD card right here. And the nice thing is the Mavic Air 2 also has a little cover for that, so you don't get any dust or debris in there, where for the Mini 2 you do not have any covering there. So make sure you take your SD cards when you use your Mini 2, because if you get out in the field, there is no onboard storage with this one, you're pretty much out of luck. Another thing to consider is both these drones have the USB-C ports. Now for the Mini 2, you have it here in the back, and the cool thing about this one is it also allows you to charge your battery while you're connected there as well. It allows you to sync your data really fast to a computer, but it also allows you to charge your battery. Now with the Mavic Air 2, you do have the USB-C here as well. The difference though is it's only able to be used for the data sync. You cannot charge your battery, which is a big bummer. Hopefully that can be changed. Hopefully that's just a software upgrade that can allow you to charge your battery. I'm not sure if that's possible, but it really would have made it a whole lot better of a drone to be able to recharge your batteries in the field if that was an option.